Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be concentrating our efforts on learning how to prepare the affordable or cheap cuts of meat. And this is like the Osso Bucco, the shank, the brisket, the short ribs, the chuck beef, and all of these meats that is labeled as like beef for stews or slow cooking types of meat. They're very, very cheap. You can buy them in bulk, you can keep them in your freezer. And when you're ready, you're going to take them out. And I'm going to show you today a recipe on how to transform these into a delicious type of ragout. Simple ingredients today, look at that. Onions, a piece of celery, 2 garlic cloves, 2 carrots, a bit of stock, and of course some red wine. I'm gonna add a bit of tomato paste, a few other aromatics, and we're done. You're gonna have something that is amazing. You can eat it the same day, you can warm it up for the next day, and you're gonna be able to feed the whole family on a budget. Let's get started. Now look at this simple set of ingredients. They all will be listed in the video description, but I think today we can say that this recipe is all about affordability, simplicity, and taste. And when we talk about taste, we need to talk about these. I mean, these cheap, meat cuts, they're just amazing. Honestly, you need to try many of them. This is like the shank. But if you have like the chuck beef or the brisket or short ribs, you're gonna discover all kinds of flavor because you got some fat, you got bone and bone marrow, and they're full of taste when you make them like this in a ragout style. So simple ingredients: carrot, celery, garlic, onions. I've added a bit of flour, tomato paste, and if you don't have stock, by the way, you can just use water and a few stock cubes and you're done. Get your hand on some cheapo red wine. That's all you need for that recipe, and you'll see we're gonna transform these into something really great. Now let's start. Okay, so let's start the recipe food preparation first. As always, what I've got here, I've got the mirepoix, I've roughly chopped celery, carrots and onion. I've washed and cut my garlic in half, removed the germ and just bruised it by crushing it a little. The meat has been seasoned with salt and pepper. If your pieces of meat like this, if it's an Osso Bucco, if it's not too large, you can keep the bone on. For me, I had some very large bones, so I've removed the bone and trim it out so I can just use the meat. It's going to be more manageable. And now for the browning. So I am using a cast iron pan. This is a Le Creuset pan. Of course you can use a stainless steel, but cast iron is better. For the oil, 2 tablespoons, and I'm using a high heat. Wait for the oil to be really hot. And I'm going to start by putting one of the bone in there and then a piece of meat. I am not going to overcrowd my pan because you really need to have your meat really brown. This is ultra important if you want to have a good result at the end. So don't be tempted to put all of the meat at once, because what you're going to end up is a boiling type of soup, and that's the last thing you want because you're going to ruin your dish. So take your time, just do it in batches, and we're going to want to brown. So I'm not going to turn this, I'm not touching it. You're going to leave the piece of meat like that and wait 3-4 minutes until it's really brown, and then turn it. Alright, so I'm just going to show you for the one piece of meat so you have a good idea on what I mean about the browning, okay? That is brown, okay? You want that beautiful crust to be present on your meat because that's going to be the aesthetic of your dish. As soon as your meat is brown, you're going to throw in the garnish, mix it in, and cook it for barely 10 seconds. If there's not enough oil, just add a tablespoon of oil in. Alright, after that, same thing, sprinkle of flour, and basically what we're making here, it's a roux. Cook it for like 10 seconds, very high heat again, and then we're going to add the tomato paste. Tomato paste goes in, same thing, you mix well, cook for a few seconds, and immediately we're going to add the red wine. Lovely. Wine in. Okay, so the mayhem of the browning and the reduction is done, and what you've noticed is that my pan is all clean. And this is a common practice in kitchen and professional kitchen. You start by browning, you dirty your pan, but before you're going to put this in the oven, you're going to take a clean cloth with a bit of water, and we're going to clean the inside like that. And that's the effect you've got. Second thing, if you thought it was too brown, once the wine is reduced, look at what I've got here. That is the color you want. This is the base of your ragout. That's a nice and coarse taste. It's very tight. And so from here, basically, all what you need to do is to add the stock in. All right, easy. After the stock comes the aromatics, bit of thyme, 3 cloves, and instead of sugar, you can put sugar if you want, but in this instance we're gonna add a good teaspoon of honey. And as a final step, I'm gonna plunge all of the lovely meat here. So the last step now, I'm gonna turn my heat off, lid on, and I'm gonna cook this in the oven at 170 degrees Celsius convection oven for 1.5 hours. The time depends on your pieces of meat. It can go up to 2 hours, but the check is you take a piece of meat at the end. If you can cut it off, it falls apart with a fork, then it's ready. So I'll show you the result when it's done. My ragout is now ready. Let me look at the meat in here, and it's falling easily off the bone. I can detach it with the fork. It's perfectly cooked. So knowing how to make the basic version of a ragout is essential and is part of these French cooking basics you need to know. That's one of the things I'm teaching in my course. And the good thing about this is that once you master that base ragout, you can freeze this as a batch, keep this in the freezer for later use, and when you want to eat it, you've got multiple options. And you can keep it as is, just as a simple brown ragout, but if you want, you can transform this into another style of ragout by adding all kinds of ingredients. You could add mushroom, bacon, onions, tomatoes, olives, and every single time, instead of having that plain, simple ragout, you will create an array of different dishes, and that is the beauty of ragout making. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take the meat out, filter the sauce over, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. We're gonna transform this into something else. All right, so I've put my meat on the side, and always gonna filter everything over. All right, so to get a clearer picture, I've taken a nice clean pan so you can see, and this is the result of the sauce. Look how clean. You can reserve the other garnish for a pie if you want the carrot and onion, but they're quite overcooked. But what I want to show you, for instance, okay, let's imagine you've made that base ragout, it was in the freezer, you take it out and say, okay, we have the brown ragout before, what are we gonna do? Well, I'm gonna open a tin of tomatoes, and I'm thinking, you know what, today I'll feel like a provincial style type of ragout. Or what I'm gonna do is to add some ingredients, so maybe a bit of tomato and perhaps twigs of rosemary to infuse. Okay, let's change the style. All right, so I've turned my heat back on. I'm gonna mix gently the whole lot. And this simple brown ragout now is gonna have strong intonation of tomatoes and rosemary. I'm just gonna leave this to cook for another 10 minutes and bang. I've got a brand new ready meal for the whole family using that core technique of ragout making. It's been simmering for 10 minutes. I think we're done here. So what I'm gonna do, we need to sample this. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm just gonna take some meat in a bowl and we have a bit of a taste, shall we? And here we are for the test drive, shall I call it? This is what I've created. So imagine how long did it take me to improve that base ragout? Next to no time. I've opened a tin of tomatoes from the cupboard. Easy. I've added some rosemary and I've got now an Osso Bucco, which is like a beef shank, slow cooked in red wine with tomato and rosemary. How beautiful is this? But of course the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So look at this. Look at the meat. Look at this. This is falling apart. Easy. So just a bit of sauce. Ooh. Wow. Oh, it's tender. It is tender. You know what? As much as we can talk about prime cuts of beef, always, oh, the eye fillet, the T-bone steak, etc. A good old slow cooked beef is absolutely excellent. And I would say that everybody out there should have a go at this, because it is absolutely a crime not to give a go to this meat. It is tasty, it is tender, and it's just succulent. And that completes the end of the video on how to make the basic version of the ragout. Remember, you can absolutely freeze that base version before you add any ingredients and then take it out later and be creative by adding all kinds of ingredients to have a new recipe to feed your family every single week. So it's a perfect thing to learn. As always, if you have any question, you can drop me a comment in a comment section. You can reach to me on Instagram, hashtag French Cook Academy, or on Facebook. You can become a patron on my Patreon page. Don't forget as well, next week comes online my course, Get Started with French Cooking. All the details in the video description, and there will be a short announcement in the weekend. Love you all, and I'll see you all very soon next week for some more easy to make recipe with simple ingredients. Take care, bye bye.